Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, managing editor at Found Health, Shaun Chavis. Hey, what you drinking? Here's another great conversation that you're going to want to pay attention to. If I were writing a book and authoring a book, one of the things that I would really be excited by would be the opportunity to be on the New York Times bestseller list. If I were doing anything with food, restaurant, chef, one of the things that would excite me would be anyone mentioning the words James Beard Award in association with my name. If I were talking with friends, then I would say probably the older, the dearer the friends, the longer, the farther back we could go with that friendship would be a measurement and a testament of the endurance of that friendship. Well, tonight, I'm going to get to combine all three of those because we're talking to Miss Shaun Chavis. How are you doing, Shaun? Welcome to the show.
What an introduction. That's amazing. I'm doing good.
Oh my gosh, we go back a long way, and we're going to talk about this, but we were literally not only high school classmates, but we were locker neighbors.
You know, I was just talking to one of our high school classmates last weekend, and we were talking about who we keep in touch with. And she was like, yeah, remember we had a locker next to Galen?
So I don't know if I've paid you enough to keep out all the dirty secrets that I don't want to get out to the public. But we're going to get into a conversation that I think so many listeners are going to benefit from because you've done so much since the time that we were sharing lockers. But I am so ahead of myself because my listeners know that to kick this thing off the right way in classic whiskey, jazz, and leadership fashion, I gotta know, I gotta ask, so what you drinking?
I wish I could say something cool like a sidecar. But I am having unsweetened iced tea, but it's a good one. I've gotten into kind of artisan iced tea. So I found this wild berry rooibos tea that's really good. So that's what I'm drinking. I drink it out of a 16-ounce mason jar. I am totally Georgia.
And that mason jar is very important, right? Because just to be glass doesn't matter. You got to have that mason insignia on there somewhere.
Gotta have the lines.
I can respect that. So that again, that means everyone knows that means that I got to make sure that I fulfill and live up to the integrity of the whiskey part of Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. And for this, I went to the top shelf. So this is the top shelf. This is as high reaching as I have. And this is something that I don't think I've ever tasted this on Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. And the reason that I haven't is there are several reasons. Number one, I haven't had a guest that would warrant for me reaching this high on in my shelf, in my case.
That's high
praise.
So
that's one thing. And then number two, this whiskey is pretty hard to find. As a matter of fact, I heard the story about this whiskey and I thought it was folklore until I happened into a whiskey shop and they said they were getting 3 bottles in about 35 minutes. And I called one of my friends who knew a whole lot about the whiskey and actually who told me the story. And I said, they're actually getting it. They're getting it in 35 minutes. What should I do? And he said, first of all, Galen, you need to breathe. And then you need to be prepared to buy everything that guy is willing to sell you. And I said, okay. And that's when I was exposed to and purchased my first and to date only bottle of Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. Now, Old Forester has a pretty extensive line, and I drink Old Forester pretty commonly. And my wife, in fact, her favorite is Old Forester 1920. Which is kind of overproof. If you ever meet my wife, she's kind of an overproof kind of lady. But the birthday bourbon is only released in small releases one time a year on September 2nd every year. And it is made to commemorate the founder of Old Forester. This particular bottle that I have, it is the 2016 edition. So every year they release like, I don't know, maybe 100 bottles per state. And if you happen to find a store that has some, usually gets reserved for their best consumers. I happened to talk my way into buying a bottle of this 12-year Old Forester Birthday Bourbon in 2016. And, I'm going to share it with you because this is half gone, right? So I'm going to crack this open because this is a pretty high level. And if you guys are interested, here's my flex. If you can find it at retail, it's relatively reasonable. But usually in the aftermarket, they put a comma on that bad boy. So there's usually a comma associated with the price. But let's go ahead and crack this open.
I can't wait to hear what your tasting notes are on this.
And we're gonna pour some here just to pour just a little bit. And I'm gonna cork this right back so it doesn't evaporate. I don't want anything to evaporate out of this. And I'll tell you the official notes on this is that this is the most complex of the Old Forester offerings. They've got you got taste and noses. The nose is cinnamon. It's got kind of a wood spice to it. There is kind of a nutty hint, like a chocolate covered almond almost. But the taste, the finish is very long. So this stays with you. And usually this is sitting around the fireplace, and enjoying it with friends, having some very rich intellectual conversation. And that's what I feel like this is going to be. So I'm going to enjoy this and ask you to share a little bit about your background, because you've done a number of different things and we've connected at various parts, at various points in your career. And I just feel like I've been on this journey with you, but it's just amazing how you've ended up doing what you do now. And it seems like it's just an incredible combination of all of the pit stops along the way. So share a little bit about your history, and I'm going to enjoy this birthday bourbon.
Yeah, it sounds like a perfect September thing. Like, you said it was released in September, and the way you describe the tasting notes, it sounds like it tastes like September. So that sounds cool. Well, I started my career as a journalist. I started writing professionally at a very young age. That looks good. Was it good?
Oh my gosh, this is incredible. I would pay the aftermarket for this. I really would. This is amazing.
That's awesome. I worked in television news. I worked in print, worked in Oklahoma City in TV news. I worked in North Carolina in TV news. I worked in online news, like when websites were TV stations were first adding websites to their portfolios. I was working on that. I've worked in Boston in television news for a little bit. I got to a point in my journalism career where I've always loved cooking. I started cooking when I was 6 years old, and I've always loved cooking. I grew up in a military family, and part of the adventure for me was not only meeting people, but getting into the local cuisine of wherever, my dad's career took us. And so I've always loved cooking. And I got to a point in my journalism career where I was like, I love writing, but working in TV really kind of isn't scratching that itch. And I also love food, and I was trying to find a way to do both. And I thought, duh, food journalism. And so I went to Boston, got a master's degree in gastronomy, and went to culinary school at the same time. I ended up as an assistant food editor at Health magazine, but quickly became the first diet editor. So I helped launch the diet section at Health magazine. There's where I worked on the book that you mentioned. We worked on a diet book that became a New York Times bestseller. So I contributed a lot of the research for that book. And then Health was owned by Time Inc. And they also had a cookbook publishing division, and something opened up over there, and I had an opportunity to move over to the cookbook publishing division. And that was just like really exciting. So I moved over, and I was put on what was called the light foods team. And I worked on books mostly for Weight Watchers and Cooking Light. I also did the first and so far only healthy Southern living cookbook. And one of the books that I worked on there won the James Beard Award for Focus on Health. And it also won the Luce Award, which was Time Inc.'s highest award globally. And so that was like really exciting. I left there, and I totally changed gears. One of my authors owned an ice cream company, and I convinced him to hire me as his content marketing director. So I worked in artisan ice cream for a while here in Atlanta. That's what brought me to Atlanta. And then after that, I decided to go on my own and start my own content marketing agency. It was a boutique agency, and we focused on food and health. And now I am a content manager for a well-funded startup called Found Health. We are a weight care solution. We're an online solution to help people who are struggling with obesity or excess weight. And I am really enjoying my career. It's been a crazy ride.
It's been a very, very interesting ride. So before we jump into this conversation, just a quick nod to our alma mater, two Putnam City North Panthers done well. I'm not going to say the year that we graduated, but let's just say internet and social media wasn't a thing. And there may be some really, really good reasons why we are excited that that was not a thing back when we were in high school.
I'm grateful, actually.
So, you and I have connected on so many different parts of your career, so many different parts of my career. And we've just really had some conversations that make me really wish that we had connected more when we were in high school, because I had no idea how incredibly dope you are. So talk a little bit about helping me understand the journey that you've been on, because we connected when we both lived in Oklahoma City, but you've traveled extensively. You've lived in a lot of different places. I've lived in a lot of different places, but all the places that I've lived, all the places that I call home, have been inside of the United States. You've got kind of you're one of my friends who I can really say I consider you to be a global citizen. It's really hard for me to pin you as being an Oklahoman, or as being a Southerner, or as being a Northerner, or even tied to the United States. We've connected and had conversations about the global impact of decisions that are being made. Talk a little bit about what has been the value of having traveled so much and developing into this person that you are right now.
I love what travel has done for me. And you know how you grow up and your parents always say, "Oh, you'll appreciate this later." Like, my parents would say that. And for when it comes to travel, I totally get it. Like, I didn't understand, I was uncomfortable with moving around when I was little. But now at this point in my life, and for several decades now, I really appreciate the value of having grown up traveling and have traveled throughout my adulthood. I think travel gives you an opportunity to realize that your culture or your way of doing things or your view on the world, your paradigm is not the only one. That other people are brilliant, other people have great ideas, other perspectives, can enlighten you. But then it's also great because you get to experience what's common among humanity. I was recently telling someone everybody loves to laugh. Like, you cannot go any place on the planet and, like, there's always going to be somebody who enjoys a good laugh. And you can always find something to laugh about together with someone, even if you don't speak the same language. Everybody enjoys good food. You'll eat anywhere you go, you'll find people who enjoy good food, and you can enjoy food together. And I really love the power of food to bring people together. So, and I think it's so valuable to know that there are other approaches, that people think differently. Not everybody thinks the same. That, there are different approaches to problems, ways people celebrate their lives and each other and their faith or their whole existence.
Wow. Yeah, one of the things I've always appreciated about our conversations is how you have a very clear view as to who you are and what you believe. And at the same time, you've got the dexterity, you've got the grace to allow other people to believe what they believe, right? It's not my way or the highway. I'm the only one who's dope in this conversation. You've got a point of view. You're not afraid to share your point of view. At the same time, there's a chance you might not have all the information. And there's a chance that someone else could educate you, right? So where did that come from? I'm sure you're going to say it probably came from your upbringing or your parents or your family, but where did it come from, this ability to hold true to what you believe while still being open to receiving new information?
You're right. It did come from my family and my upbringing. I credit my dad largely with it. My dad grew up in Eastern North Carolina. His father was a sharecropper, and he came from a mixed race marriage. He really traversed a lot in his life. Like, he came from, growing up on a farm, the son of a sharecropper, to my father was just such a phenomenal person, if I can say so. He became a colonel in the United States Army. He fought in Korea and Vietnam, and he started his own company. He started a government contracting company, which he ran for 25 years, and he had government contracts in 8 states and hundreds of employees. And so to traverse all those spaces and to still be genuine to who he was. And he had a unique ability to make friends and build relationships wherever he was. I wouldn't say that he was really extroverted. To me, he was kind of introverted, but he always had good relationships with people and, was very personable. And I remember growing up, him telling me that you can't hate other people because you'd be hating yourself. Yeah, dad was deep. And so, just the way that we moved in the world, he really taught by example to be open to other people. I think one of the most odd examples of that I had in my childhood, we had moved to Germany. I'm going to go ahead and date myself and say that at the time, Germany was not reunified and it was West Germany. So I had two younger sisters and we moved to Germany, and it was like one of our first nights off base. So we were going to a restaurant in the civilian area, and people were coming up to me and my sisters. My mother cornrowed our hair, and strangers were coming up to touch our hair. And we freaked out. Like, we were like, what? And like clinging on to our parents' legs and things like that. And my father's like, they're just curious. And he put us at ease, and we got to the restaurant, and he started getting us really interested in the things in the menu that we weren't familiar with. And then, he had some friends come over who were German, and we started talking and making introductions. And he made situations that seemed intimidating interesting, and opportunities to explore and opportunities to understand other people and to build relationships. And that's one example of that. So my father just had a unique sense of instilling that in us.
Wow. I mean, and I'm sure you didn't appreciate that fully when you were when you were small and a kid. But oh my gosh, it's amazing how much our parents have instilled and invested in us that we really don't get to see the return on that investment until we're much, much older in life. Okay, so I've got a New York Times best-selling contributor. I've got a James Beard Award contributor here. So you are literally one of the better people to help me with this defining of the name whiskey, jazz, and leadership, because I'm working with a whole bunch of, our high school English teachers would be proud because I'm working with a bunch of metaphors here, metaphors, analogies, and, so we're making it happen here. So as you know, I like all three literally. So I love whiskey. I love jazz. I love leadership. I've built a career out of my passion for leadership, and have just recently started to embrace my passion for jazz music, and just owning up to the fact that, yeah, I'm kind of a whiskey head. But I also like the metaphor of all three, and that's what I like to ask my guests to help me define from their perspective. How does whiskey, jazz, and leadership connect? The metaphor for me is that whiskey is about the social element of being with your crew, enjoying what you enjoy with the people you enjoy it with. The metaphor for jazz is how do you get from where you are to where you need to be, even in those situations where you don't have sheet music and there's no script, and you still have to get there using whatever you can to get there on time and in key. And then the metaphor for leadership for me is marketing is fun, strategy is important, but at some point someone has to stand up and say, we're getting ready to make this thing happen starting right now. And until someone does that, then we are just having a conversation. Nothing's going to happen until someone does something. And so that's how all of that fits for me. How does that fit from your perspective?
And I've listened to your podcast and listened to you have this conversation with others, and it's always so deep the way that people have different perspectives. Well, certainly, I'm going to say whiskey to me is like, you talk about, getting together with people. There have been so many times in my life when, you can pour a drink or, have, pour something delicious and have a plate of something to nibble on and bring people together. When I have dinner parties, and I love throwing dinner parties, my favorite part of the dinner party is like after dinner, when like, some of your guests go away and your really close friends are still there, and you can just like, bring out the other bottle of wine that you've been holding, or whatever.
The other bottle.
The other bottle. And just really enjoy talking. And sometimes the conversation goes till 2 or 3. But I mean, there have been so many other times in my life when, I've been able to share a drink. I remember going to Morocco and having Moroccan mint tea, and like with people I didn't share a language with, or I could only speak a few words, but it just became this unifying thing to share this delicious sweet tea, or going to Italy and sharing wine with people. And then I remember one of your guests talking about how whiskey for them was like passion, or maybe you had said it. And I really think that when you think about whiskey, jazz, and leadership, and whiskey representing passion and jazz representing improvisation and leadership, the outcome, I think that all three of those things are connected. Like you have to know yourself and know your passions in order to get somewhere. Like what direction are you headed and what are you about? and you're like, to me, I feel like I'm constantly learning that about myself. Like what am I am about today? I think sometimes even our callings are seasonal, and they morph over time, as we experience life. But you really have to know your passions and, know yourself. And then when it comes to jazz and improvisation and getting somewhere when you don't have a script, growing up, like when you move somewhere and you don't know people, like you gotta make it up. You gotta figure out, how to make friends, how to navigate the new space, how to learn new rules. If you're a kid in school or, you're on the job, you have to learn a new culture. So that's part of it. And then I think, beyond childhood and in my adulthood, I think especially for women and people of color, there's not a playbook like there are for other people. And so you kind of have to, like you can see, okay, yeah, this is a playbook and these are the rules, but what's my interpretation of it? Like, how am I going to do this? And you have to have some improvisation there. A lot of times things in business, like we're taught a certain way to do it. Like, there's one way to negotiate, or there's one way to do sales, or which, is, something that I've struggled with in my career. Or, there's one approach to, growth, or one approach to pitching a business. But, you have to really think about, okay, what's my approach? What are the cards I have in my hand? What does the playing field look like for me? And how do I play to win? With the cards that I have and the way the board is set up for me, how do I play to win? And you have to be able to improvise. And I think passion is what gets you across the board to do that. And I think you have to, I think it's great for women to be able to say, okay, yeah, this is how negotiation happens. How do I do it in a way that's authentic to me, that still gets me the results that I want?
Wow.
You know?
I love your approach to helping me define whiskey, jazz, and leadership, because what you're bringing into this is the personal nature of what does this mean to you? How does this allow you to be successful? And I have told clients a lot recently that I can tell you what I would do in your situation, but that's not going to do you a whole lot of good because you don't have the experiences that I have. You don't have the strengths that I have. You don't have the weaknesses that I have, or the successes and the failures that I've had that I would bring to bear to make my approach effective. The question then is, how do we use your experiences, your strengths, your weaknesses, to your point, to make this thing yours so that you can step into it the way that only you can? And that is so important, especially in this space that you're in now, which, entrepreneurism and that is a lot of that is trying to figure this bad boy out, because the rule book is really just a paperweight, right? The rule book has nothing to do with anything that's going on in reality.
That's true. I mean, right now, I'm a Black woman who's beyond 30s in a Silicon Valley based tech company. Like, I work remotely, but the company is based in Silicon Valley. It was funded by Silicon Valley investors, and I'm a Black woman in this tech space. And I realized, like, that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, you're not supposed to be there.
Right. And then I think it's further unique because I'm somebody who has grown up struggling with obesity. And this is a company that helps people with that condition. And I get to shape the whole narrative that this company produces as a Black woman who's lived with obesity all her life. Like, and in a Silicon Valley health tech company, like, that ain't everybody,
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.